Hi, Allie.
Hi, Adam.
We are back with the Wonder Jam cast.
It's good to be back.
It's good to be back. We're
Yeah.
starting the sharing today. I think you've noticed this, but if anyone listening has noticed, the world is pretty weird since the middle of March. It's gotten very weird. And we are a small business who works with a lot of small businesses, and small businesses and their struggles made headline news a bit. We've been in the thick of it with our clients, helping them navigate all sorts of things. And through all of that, you and I have evolved a lot in the business. The Wonder Jam has evolved quite a bit. Tell the people about what they're going to get to listen to here shortly.
Yeah, so Adam and I will lay out what's happening, but later in this episode, I will be talking to Ashli, who will be a new addition to the Wonder Jam as a family of businesses and collaboration. And
so I wanted to trick you into talking a little bit, and I wanted to interrupt you. That was my normally I would plan. If we did this in person, we could just make facial expressions at each other or like point and be like, True. You talk now or something. True. But we can't do that.
No.
So you're talking to Ashli, you have an interview with her, and Ashli is going to come on as a partner, right? Which is a big deal for us. And you talk about some of you and Ashli's work history together and how you had seen that relationship developing, which I'm excited for the rest of the world to get to meet Ashli.
Yeah. Why don't you explain kind of what's going on at kind of a high level elevator pitch?
Yeah. So the Wonder Jam, as it evolved through these past months or since the onset of COVID really, is we had figured out, and this actually really stems back to the end of last year. We started interviewing some of our best clients, and we learned that our best clients didn't understand all of the different things that we had done. We were a brand, and each person kind of understood you could think of us as a garden, if you will, maybe.
Yeah.
And people understood whatever section of the garden they were in, but they didn't know that there was other things happening. So there'd be people who worked with us for a really long time, or they worked with me, and they'd be like, are you guys good at e-commerce? Can you guys do that? And I was like, we're very good at that. We do a ton of that. We like help build and grow and scale whole online brands. We had done that for a bit. There's other people who were like, who had worked with you for a while, and we're like, hey, and then you found out they were spending a ton of money in either online communities or coaching or some other thing that we offered. They're like, I wish you had something like that. And I was like, we literally do. And so there was a little bit of confusion. We found even some of our most involved people, the people who worked with us the most, that we loved working with, like our top tier clients, didn't understand all the capabilities that we had. And you and I don't love, it's not fun to try and sell everybody everything all the time. So we'd be meeting with them, and then we'd end up like, I'm not trying to be like, hey, you should also buy these other things from us. So that was like the end of last year that sort of came to ahead. And then at the beginning of this year, pre-COVID, around January, February, we started to really work on our systems and processes. You and I did, and our whole team did together. And we figured out that it was we were selling like 38 different things. And it was really difficult to standardize or systematize anything. It took each person being like fully dialed in and present and thinking and reviewing what the specific project was about, which was cool. It was a challenge for you and I to involve other people. And it was a challenge to serve small businesses efficiently. And so we sort of just imagined all of that, or we sort of bumped up against those two things. And then COVID happened, right? And a bunch of the people who we had worked with, whether they had brick and mortar stores or they had restaurants or, all sorts of people had their own, whether their business financial situations, their personal financial situations. We work with moms who became, I guess this never really happened with any of the dads we work with. It seems to always be with moms have to do this. This is weird. We'll go say parents in general. But the parents we work with became like 24/7 sort of caretakers for their children, which wasn't part of their normal routine, right? So some entrepreneurs all of a sudden had an hour and 15 minutes per day to work on their thing. And
Yeah.
they used to have 4 to 6 hours a day. So everything changed dramatically. And some people invited us to do a lot more. Other people paused. Other people's businesses closed. And others changed entirely to what they do. Everything is just changing. We kind of wanted to evolve with that. We watched Ashli really lean in to those changes. I remember having a conversation with her. I don't even think you were on this, where she was like, I just want to do more. I want to make sure like the Wonder Jam and its clients are good. Like that's what she cared about. And Matt, our web developers, much, echoed that sort of same thing. This is just an evolution. We're going to launch what we are calling sister brands, 3 different unique and distinct brands that work very specifically. They have very specific offerings. They work with very specific types of people and businesses and serve as the front door for those things, and also front door to be most relevant, easy to understand. We want it to be really easy for somebody to understand that they don't fit in to these, and other people who know they should fit in to sort of get that quickly. Yeah. And so I'm excited to kind of share all of those with people. Do you kind of want to run through the first batch of sisters that we are going to launch into the world?
Yeah. So like Adam said, the Wonder Jam will be kind of a launching point for sister brands now and in the future. And I think the cool thing is that it really is sort of like that soil and keeps everything grounded. And Adam will be, maybe towards the end of this, you can kind of go a little bit into more detail about what the Wonder Jam will actually look like. But, we looked to other brands and companies that have done this before. And later in the episode, I talk more about that. But I will be basically running and managing a brand and a business called Wonderly, which will help through design and branding small businesses that basically offer exceedingly special services. So instead of saying just we help service-based businesses, I think I really wanted to get specific on what made the clients special. And it was really tied to how they approach their own services in a really vulnerable and, I would say, healing way. And I talk a lot more about the vision and all of that later on. And then we'll be launching Basis, which will be coming alongside retail and e-commerce brands through the Shopify platform, but also looking into their photography, branding, and packaging as well. And Ashli will be running and managing that business, which is really exciting. And, we go into this further. Ashli and I talk about what it is that when we looked at, the state of the world, especially after George Floyd was murdered, and really thinking through like, where do we want work to live inside of our day-to-day life, and not wanting to compartmentalize our work for sure, but also freeing up a lot of time through treating this as, one organization with multiple brands, and thinking about how the Wonder Jam can, help facilitate and take care of a lot of the things that Ashli and I don't really want to do. A lot of that comes from like how the finances are handled, or legal structures, or, processes and things like that. Obviously being involved, but we see day to day, every day, that a lot of small business owners find themselves running a business and saying, I didn't even want to do most of this stuff. And so I'm working with somebody right now through coaching. We're working on their calendar, and it's always mind blowing when you realize, and you are a perfect example of this. And I'm sure there's everyone listening to this, you can relate to this at some level, but there's like the job, right? Like you designing and creating things for clients that is awesome, right? And having that experience be incredible. And then there's 122 other things that come with running a business that are sort of irrelevant and disconnected from that, but they're part of running a business. And so we had found kind of Ashli had been in that same boat a bit, where she was in working with her, and we'd collaborated on projects. Some of our most involved clients she also works with, and we've collaborated for a long time on things. And you realize like she's incredible with doing that. And she
I think all through since COVID, all of us have sort of re-examined our priorities. And
sure.
I think we all were craving a little bit more space to invest in relationships and friendships and social causes and bending the world a little bit more into the hope that we have it can look like, and not just doing a really good job with clients during the day and then spending the evenings working through bookkeeping and emails and all the other things, but really can we make this better together and also provide a level of autonomy and empowerment to yourself and to Ashley and to the other sort of sister brands, which I think is really exciting. So, and so you have Wonderly, which is for businesses that provide exceedingly special service, which I love. And I'm excited for the world to get to meet a little bit more about that from you. We have Basis, which is working with e-commerce retailers, people selling and moving products online. And then we have a third one. We're calling it Studio J. And if you're local to Columbus, Ohio, and you've been to our studio, that's the building letter that we're in. We're at in Studio J. And one of the things that happened to me in one of the most bizarre sort of, all of this COVID stuff has been bizarre, but a coaching client popped up right after COVID hit, a freelancer messaged me. I was like, hey, I think I want to start coaching. I talked to her as a photographer locally here, and she had talked about the frustration with using studios, like some of the headaches that came from, and she does an incredible job, treats clients well. I've watched her do photo shoots. And as she talked about that, I was just like, you can just use ours, right? It was the beginning of COVID. Everything was locked down. We hadn't been in there for a couple of days. And I was like, just use ours. And as we talked about it more, we realized that there was an opportunity to empower photographers in a way that was powerful, in a way that could help and support their businesses a lot without them needing to take on the overhead. We have a past podcast episode where we talk about the realities of owning and running a studio that no one tells you about. Yeah. And so I think that's what Studio J is going to do. It's going to be a space to empower and support some of the top tier photographers and videographers around Columbus. It's going to be very specific to the local area, whereas Wonderly and Basis can work with people all over the place. Obviously we work with a bunch of folks in Columbus, but Ashley lives in Jacksonville. You and I are the only teammates in Columbus right now. So which is exciting. So Studio J will come. Wonderly is ready for the world. Basis is ready for the world. And I'm excited to continue sharing and talking with everybody and letting everyone see what we are creating and putting out into the world.
I agree. So if you want to keep hearing more about Basis and Wonderly, keep on listening. Ashley and I have a great, longer, candid conversation, and I'm excited for you all to hear it.
I love it. And if you stick around afterwards, we'll share a little bit about what you can expect to come from the Wonder Jam cast and some of these other things. So if you're a big fan, you can listen all the way through.
All right, so I'm here with Ashley, and we are going to basically just interview each other and talk to each other, right, Ashley? I feel like that's like the focus. That's what we really love about other podcasts. And in general, this sounds so funny, but I've been watching those actors on actors interviews. I think Vogue puts them out, or maybe someone else on YouTube. And I was sharing with like friends and colleagues that it was really interesting listening to two people from the same industry ask each other questions. And sometimes they've worked together, sometimes they haven't. And I really thought that would be a cool way to introduce everything that we have going on. So if anyone hasn't listened to the Wonder Jam cast before, or they're just not familiar with me, I'll do a little bit of an intro and then Ashley can introduce herself. But I would say when I was reflecting on some of the things that I feel like are those like top hits of my life, I really resonate with sharing that first and foremost, I was an artist. I think that that's something that's become much more apparent to me in my 30s, and just that foundation with making things with my hands. And when I say that, I don't even mean making things with my hands on a computer, but paints and charcoal and all of that. And so Ashley and I both actually have similar stories in how we used to play pretend when we were younger. And so I would always want to own my own dry cleaner because I've realized that basically it's because my dad would take his suits to the dry cleaner. It was like one of the few small businesses that I ever came in contact with. I didn't grow up in a family made of small business owners. And so I would like design my own tags and receipts, and I would wrap clothes in saran wrap. And yeah, I think that a lot of that, comes from just wanting to have that kind of high touch experience and thinking of like all the different things that a customer would come in contact with, which I really love. Ashley, can you share a little bit about the things that you used to pretend?
Yeah, I loved when you told me you used to play dry cleaner, because my sisters and I used to play a game that we called Town. And I have 2 younger sisters, and we would all just be different business owners and run our own little town. And it was so fun. I always did different things. I loved being a post office worker, which is still like one of my backup plans if the post office still exists.
Yeah, you can still do it.
I really just want to walk around neighborhoods and look at houses and drop off the mail and chat with people.
Yeah.
And my youngest sister, who is a small business owner now, was always the bartender, which we like to make fun of her now for.
Oh my gosh, that's so good. You know what? I used to make my own little pockets in my books, like a library card. I don't know if they still do that with library cards, because I'm ashamed to admit it, but I'm not a frequent library visitor in my adulthood. I like still buy used books, but I used to create my own stamps and like the date and the log and everything. And so I think it's funny because those things that we were clearly, it's not like we were running the books or like paying taxes in these make-believe businesses, which I think is really aligned with everything that we are doing, like starting September 1st. So I think that that's really awesome. So yeah, I've just always had a desire to create. And honestly, I really like selling. I like quoting projects. I've had little shame around money in that way. I think I have always been able to grasp like what it is, the value that I offer and what it's worth. And so as I started my own business in 2012 full time, I realized I never wanted to become a business development focused owner. I saw a lot of my peers grow their businesses to the point where they were just basically doing business development. They were meeting with people, they were selling, they weren't making anymore. And I really didn't resonate with that. And last summer, I decided I really wanted to lean into 2 of my strengths. And so as a team at the Wonder Jam, we all take the StrengthsFinder assessment. And the 2 strengths that I feel like were being underutilized were my top strength, which is maximizer, and intellection, which is really about taking the time and space to read and write. And I wasn't doing that. I was very much maxing out my achiever strength and my responsibility strength. So I was taking on way too much and I was just working too much. And so yeah, going into this, I am really excited to share more about what we have going on, but I'm excited mostly because I get to keep doing my favorite parts of the job, and we can give more context into that. But I would love everyone to learn more about you, Ashley.
Yeah, I love it. And I think what probably people listening will hear is that I feel like we're really similar in just sort of our thought process, and even a little bit of like how we grew up and how we developed our interests early on. So outside of playing Town, my other big interest even as a kid was technology. And I have this epic photo that I'm going to have to figure out how to share on Instagram. It's of myself. I'm probably 8 or 9. And I'm sitting at our first family computer, which was set up in this little like nook in our kitchen. Yeah. And my dad and I are sitting at the computer together, and we just got it. You can see like the computer box in the background. And I am helping my dad learn how to use it. And it's a memory I like still remember, like putting in the floppy disk, and I'm like typing some sort of MS-DOS prompt on like a black and green screen to like figure out how to load up the floppy disk. Yeah. I think it was Rayman. I was like trying to remember what game it was. It was definitely Rayman, or like I have a weird memory also of playing Pocahontas games on a floppy disk. Yeah. But floppy disk. Either way, I just remember that like magical feeling of figuring out technology and like being able to type something and making something from that. Yeah, it was always super interesting to me as a kid. And so I like feel so happy and excited, and it feels very like fateful and magic that now my life can be to combine sort of these two parts of what feels so integral to forming my passions early on into the work that I'm doing today.
Yeah.
It feels still like I'm playing town, and it still feels like I'm getting to like come up with this magical technology for the first time.
Yeah.
So I think that's just like, oh, it just feels really
It's
exciting
like
to be able to do
serendipitous.
that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I wish I could go tell like 9-year-old Ashley,
Oh,
you're going to do this the rest of your life.
I say that all the time. My mom put me into a photography class when I was probably 10, because that's the year my sister was born. And we would go around with film cameras and take pictures. And I wish I could go back and say, you are going to grow up and take pictures of nail polish and, you know, like
I love it.
food and all this stuff, and people are going to pay you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I love baby us so much.
I know, me too.
So kind of like moving forward in time, I am ancient. I started college in 2005, and I knew I was like very interested in art and technology, but maybe where our paths differ a bit is I'm terrible at making things with my hands. And so I started taking a lot of design classes in college and just found myself so frustrated because I just don't have the like mechanical skills to create art physically. But I started taking some, I wouldn't even call them web design classes because I don't think they existed, but more like computer art classes. And it just really clicked. And I sort of made up my own major by just like smashing things together that felt fun. I read a book about HTML on a bus. We were going to New Orleans after Katrina. It was like an Ohio State spring break trip, and to help with cleanup. And I just remember bringing this like huge O'Reilly book, which if you aren't familiar with O'Reilly books, they have these really pretty like illustrations of animals on them, and they're like thick textbooks about technology. And I brought this book on the bus and read it and literally started like writing code on paper because I was on the bus.
Yeah.
And that's sort of how I started teaching myself HTML, which is the core code behind a website. And I think I just always love being scrappy like that and just saying yes before you actually know how to do something and just figure it out as you go. So that was very much my college experience, is just smashing it together and making it work.
Yeah, I resonate with that. Sorry to interrupt. Like in college, I think I started the same year you did. I get my years so mixed up. Yeah, 2005. And I always say college was like where I just tried a lot of stuff and was never really great at anything, but I just did it. Like I never felt like I didn't have the awareness to understand what I wanted to focus on, but I was like, I'll try woodworking. I coded in Flash. Like I did all the things that I was, that was available. But I wasn't getting like A+ in anything. I just was trying it, which I think is really, I think you and I have that in common.
Yeah. That's something I hope that we never lose, is just that like willingness to try and be embarrassed or not get it right the first time. I think it's something that when you're young, you just have no awareness of yourself or others to be like, oh, I'm totally doing this wrong and embarrassing myself. And I think as you get older, that becomes like more of a concern. And it's something I'm trying to fight really hard against as I get older, is to still allow myself to be curious and playful and make some mistakes along the way. Yeah, so post-college, I got into working in e-commerce and retail. One of my very first jobs out of college was working for an e-commerce site, and this was in 2009. So the internet was a much, much different place. Amazon hadn't really hit the market yet, and I got to work in this particular role pre-Amazon, and then I left as Amazon was sort of taking over their business, which is sort of like a sad note to end on. But I did learn a ton in that job, specifically around designing for e-commerce and how that's much different than designing for aesthetic reasons. And you really have to be thinking about conversion and the user experience and what the flow of the page is going to be like. Yeah. And that like magical mix that felt very much like art and science coming together really hooked me. And so after that job, most of my career really from there has been in a creative director role. A good portion of that was at a digital agency. And I worked with a lot of big e-commerce brands like Bath and Body Works and Homage and DSW, a lot of Columbus giants, and really continued to hone that kind of skill of designing specifically for sales and how that's so much different.
Yeah.
And then from there, I did a creative director role at the Ohio State Wexner Medical Center, which was totally not an e-commerce experience, but it was working on these really large scale websites for patients and really thinking through the needs of a patient and the needs of a caregiver and the emotional state that those types of users might be in when they're visiting your website and trying to find information. And I think I really developed empathy for users at that role. And just, I learned so much at both of those jobs. I love them so much. And I'm always grateful for everything I learned for them. I don't think I would be a successful small business owner without them.
Yeah.
And I have nothing like, it wasn't, I feel like I hear a lot or talk to a lot of people who are like, and I hated it and I knew I needed to do my own thing.
Yeah.
And I don't really feel that way. Like I loved the work environment. I loved having coworkers and I learned so much.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I grew up in a family of small business owners. My dad owned a pizza shop.
That's awesome.
He still does. And my sister today is a small business owner. And I feel like I just always had that entrepreneurial spirit in me. And I knew eventually it would come out in some way.
Yeah.
So last year, my family and I moved from Columbus to Jacksonville, Florida. And I decided it was a great time to go out and be a freelance designer and developer, something I'd always wanted to do, but sort of was a little bit risk averse to try.
Yeah.
And so that's what I've been doing for the last year. I've been year one into doing that now and have really loved the freedom. And we'll talk a little bit about this more, I'm sure, but I definitely worked with some clients who weren't the best fit for me. And I think that's okay. Like, I think the first year is just about figuring shit out and staying in business during COVID.
Yeah. You had to like, you moved, pandemic, you know, there's like so much, in a way, like talking to you over the last year more closely and collaborating has been such a good reminder of what it is like the first year. And I'll be entering into this August marks my 8th year in just being full-time, self-employed. And there's so many things. I have a horrible memory anyway. And so there's been so many things that I remember that you can quickly take for granted, or that you can kind of romanticize the past, or maybe make the past seem more dramatic than it was. And so it's been a really good kind of reflection period, because you and I actually met when you were at that digital agency, and you were a creative director. I had just left my full, like my 9-to-5, and I was brought in as a contractor, which I was not, I would say I've done as an employee, I would always do what I needed to do, but I was never a super passionate employee. And I always wanted to own my own business. And I really value the autonomy and the control that I have over my schedule, or how quickly I can act and make decisions. And so I don't even remember how I got connected to CareWorks Tech. Was it you?
It was through me. Yeah.
Okay.
I think I stumbled across you on Twitter in like 2008 and was low-key obsessed from day one. And I think you can just tell when you vibe with people, and I definitely felt that way with you. We have like a similar backstory of growing up in a small town and basically marrying the first person we met at a young age. Shout out to Adam and Alex. But we're also very extremely curious people and creative people, and I really liked following your journey because you had such a willingness to create and share with the world.
Oh, I shared so much back then. I think back to how my life has shifted as I've gotten older. Just, I'm so much more curated, or I hold back a little bit more. I would say I'm maybe sharing more deeply, but I think back to just how that was such a huge reason why I got connected to people. Was just, I think I was very much, I was still curating, but I was much more of an open book. I remember you and I would go out to lunch when we both worked at that agency, and you would slightly mention freelancing, like, oh, I kind of think about doing this. And here I was, like, we were young in general, but just, you know, I was still figuring it out. I was like in the first 6 months. And, you know, I remember saying like way too early, like if we ever brought someone in like at a partner level, like I think Ashley would be awesome. And it was like such a random statement. It also, not to connect you with my romantic life, but I said the same thing when I met Adam. I was like, I think I could like marry him like very early. Yeah. And they weren't super needy statements. Like it wasn't out of like from an unhealthy place. I think it's actually really telling that those two statements are sort of like, if someone else heard it, if the other person had heard it, they'd be like, oh my gosh, that's a little weird. But I had a really like, I don't know, just like a feeling about it. And I remember like I photographed you when you were pregnant. I photographed you and your daughter, and just kind of stayed connected, even if we weren't spending a lot of time together. Yeah. And then we met basically a little over a year ago before you moved, because, and this is where we get into what's changing, is just talking about what it would take to open up the opportunity for you to come in to partner on all the things that we're doing and serving the small businesses that we want to serve. And I shared from the beginning, and I think you, me, and Adam have all been able to be really honest and transparent, that I never want to take someone's like freedom through owning their own business away from them. Like, I think that everyone who wants to do that should do that. And I don't think it's the right path for everybody, but I was very clear. I remember over a year ago where even in my heart, like, I think if Ashli wants to give this a shot, she should do it. But I do think that, and I wasn't clear on it then, I was like, I think we can be better together in a professional sense. And so that kind of, that context is really for anyone that's like, who the heck are these two people and why are they talking to each other? But I'm excited to share essentially what's happening. And I guess I should just go into it.
Let's kind of start and let's start with kind of what's happening with the changes at the Wonder Jam, and tell us a little bit more.
So the Wonder Jam will exist and stay kind of as this foundational soil for what we would call sister brands. And these sister brands are going to essentially launch from here, from the Wonder Jam, while the Wonder Jam exists to, feed and take care of and kind of grow the field. Like, if we're using this sort of plant soil metaphor, I think that it works really well. Ashli, you and I both started reading Braiding Sweetgrass this summer, and just really, connecting to this idea that corn, beans, and squash all grow really harmoniously together. And a lot of modern farming splits those things up and then takes essentially what they would do for each other and kind of creates like a man-made, what I would say like a man-made solution for it. So whether it's shade or breaking down minerals or nutrients to feed one another, this sort of three sister concept really resonated with us and felt, it feels like we're learning from the plants, which is a lot of what Braiding Sweetgrass talks about. Is like, they can be our teachers. We came after them. And I think that that's so powerful. And so the Wonder Jam being kind of the soil, Ashli and I are each launching our own sister brand and becoming the managing partner of our own brand, which is really awesome. So if you think of it as one organization, but multiple brands within, I think that that's probably the best way to think about it, that we will all still be working as a team. But I'm so excited to get even more clear about what I'm doing in my own brand and my own essentially business. And I think the same goes for you. I would love to hear from you, and we can kind of just start asking each other questions like, what about, you've been crushing it on your own for over a year. Obviously, when you own a business, there's things that are difficult and there's like really awesome successes. I'd love to hear what kept you interested in staying connected to us as the Wonder Jam, and some of the things that it allows for.
Yeah. I think when I look back, and I did some, especially at the start of COVID, when everything was such an unknown, I looked back at sort of what had been the first 9 months-ish of my business and laid out what felt good and what didn't feel good. And a lot of the clients that I got started with were some corporate clients who were on retainer, and it was really nice, stable work. It did nothing for my soul. And when I looked at the projects that felt really aligned with my values and working with clients that were doing things that actually made the world feel better to me, they were all projects that were done in collaboration with the Wonder Jam. And I think that I've always just, like, year one for me was definitely quote unquote being a contractor, being a freelancer, and just inserting myself almost anonymously into other people's businesses and serving as an extension of their team. But when I thought about what do I want to do long term, I just kept joking with my husband. I was like, I just want to build the Wonder Jam, but that already exists. So it's like the Wonder Jam Jacksonville.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I've always just admired sort of not only the business that you and Adam have built together and the types of clients that you work with who are just very intentional clients and are making things and contributing to the world in a really impactful way. But I've also came out of agencies where building an intentional life for yourself was never the priority. And so something that I've loved watching from afar is just you and Adam really building boundaries and intention around how your business and your personal life and your relationship together are all intertwined, but there's some very clear boundaries and definitely boundaries. You can tell I have a lot to say about boundaries, but
I want to talk more about it. I think it really, in my mind, I had written in my notes this morning, I've spent so many years being kind of a gatekeeper and really filtering clients, like to the point where doing it on my own, like I'm so excited to open up this new version of the Wonder Jam family of businesses because we can all sort of spread out and do kind of that similar filtering with potential clients, because I've spent so much time listening to my intuition and my gut and saying like, this person just feels right. And sure, there's been, you know, complex projects or conflict that have come up over the last, you know, I would even say 3 years for sure. But for the most part, by the time anyone other than me came in contact with a client, I feel like I've spent a lot of time investing in growing that relationship and being vulnerable when appropriate and things like that. So when you say that, it just like makes me really happy because I'm really proud of our client list and genuinely like talking to everyone. Like I was in meetings all day yesterday and I was just like, everyone is so great. Like nobody makes me feel bad. Nobody stresses me out. And I'm just like so thankful for that.
Yeah. And I think I forgot that I was building my own business and that I was allowed to be choosy with clients, or I was allowed to not check my email at 11 p.m. on a Saturday night. And I feel like working with you and Adam has been very refreshing. And I'm really excited to partner with you because I think I personally sometimes need that like other person to help me in setting those boundaries. And so I'm really excited to learn from you guys in that area more than anything.
Yeah.
I'm curious so I know we're going to talk a little bit more about the sisters, but talk a little bit about why this felt like it needed to be something new and not just like a reinvention of the Wonder Jam.
Yeah, that's a great question. The funny answer that isn't actually true is I was on the phone with a bank earlier this year and I was trying to tell them the name of my business and they were so confused. And I was like, wow, I really named it the Wonder Jam when I was like 24 years old. Cool. And we loved that. Like we loved that it was different and that someone who's super stuffy would be confused by it, which is most likely the banker that I was talking to. But, you know, I'm 33. And so they say that you like your taste buds change every 7 years or your allergies change every 7 years. And I was like, you know, we just hit 7 years and we're different and we don't hold certain things so closely. And so in talking to you over the last year and kind of teasing the idea of partnership, we heard from you and understood that someone coming into the Wonder Jam as maybe a third partner felt weird only because we built so much around the Wonder Jam as being Adam and Allie and they're married and it's like so cute. And then last summer I found out that my great grandparents' last name was Wonderly. And I was like, that is so cool. Like I named my business the Wonder Jam. I had no idea. It wasn't a name that carried through. Like no one in my family right now that I know of has that last name, but it was just kind of like in my head for 6 to 8 months where I thought like, that's really cool. Maybe I would change the name of the Wonder Jam. And it really didn't come into full fruition until I took the time, like 2 hours to just write out everything that I thought. And what it came down to was writing down the things that I actually want to do and the things that I don't want to do. And having observed all of the ways that Adam is such an amazing CEO. He's actually a really amazing CEO. And I've always been majority owner of the Wonder Jam. I still am, but I don't want to run a business. I want to do work. And I asked you to do the same thing. What do you want to do? What do you not want to do? And it became really clear. I mean, I don't know if you felt this way, but all of the things that we want to do like rarely overlapped, which I think is incredible. The only things that I think are completely aligned are mission, value, you know, principles, values, all that stuff. And so I kind of positioned all of that as you and I and Adam were all talking about like, what would business names be? It was really, to me, it wasn't until we really got into why are we better together? What do we want to do individually? And seeing that the things that we didn't want to do can be picked up by team members and partners. And it really,
I always found it really funny because I can see inquiries that come into the Wonder Jam, and I would see one come in that would be like this huge Shopify overhaul with like 1,000 product lineup and also a WordPress site. I'm like, oh my gosh, this sounds amazing. I hope that they take this on and I can help with it. And then Allie would be like, oh my gosh, this project sounds
horrible.
Like the opposite of what I ever want to do. So, and I feel like sort of that same way when I see projects come in that are like, help me just figure out what my brand is. I'm like, that sounds like kind of fun, but also pretty terrifying to me. So I think that we do really similar aesthetic work, but we like very different mediums.
I completely agree. And it was probably earlier this year, even maybe, I know it was pre-COVID, where you were leading a project that came in through the Wonder Jam. And I was looking at the work you were doing and I thought to myself, I don't want to do that work. I don't mind being a part of the client relationship or coming in to help where I'm needed, but I have no desire to grow this portion of our business by myself. And I would want Ashli to run it. And so at some point we just said, Ashli, we want to build something around e-commerce. And if you don't do it, I don't know if we'll do it. And so I think the thing people don't realize when things like this happen within an organization is it's like it's been like years and years and years, but the last year has been integrating you into our processes, us getting integrated into yours, slowly adding each other or like kind of condensing some of our resources and sharing some of that stuff. And it's like any relationship, right? You don't just say like in 1 second, like you're my best friend or like we're getting married tomorrow. It's this really small iterative process. And so I think ultimately the Wonder Jam was becoming really confusing from a standpoint of we did a lot of things. COVID changed things a lot for us. Our team got extremely smaller because revenue, started to dry up pretty quickly. And because naturally our small business clients had no idea what was coming. And it really forced us to, I'll even just speak for myself. It forced me to just like get back into the making of things. And so with basically the loss of production oriented team members, I started saying, I'm doing this project. So I am going to not take this project on because I'm not going to just delegate it. Like it really forced me to kind of essentially get back into the driver's seat and say, I can't just take on this client and then pass it off to someone else. It's going to be the work that I do. And so I started to become a lot more definitive. So maybe before we talk about like what each of our sister brands do, I would love to hear like, what are some of the things that you decided you really wanted to do starting in the future? Like, yeah.
So one of the other things that I have to say I love about you and Adam is that you have forced me to do visioning work more than I've ever done in my life.
Adam has done that for me, so shout out to him. Yeah.
Shout out to Adam for changing Allie and I's lives.
Yes.
I don't know why I hate it, but I actually think it's because I just intuitively know in my gut what feels right when it comes to what I'm doing and who I'm spending time with. And I don't think I've had these moments where I'm like, oh my gosh, I have no idea who I am or what I want. So visioning has just felt like it's just slowing me down because I already know the direction I'm heading in. But I will say that I am reformed because I've actually spent a lot of time typing and writing and thinking about it. And
Yeah.
it at least helps me communicate it to others, because I do think where I've struggled is like, I know it, but I don't know how to
I completely
ask
agree.
for it or tell other people.
Yeah.
And so when you and I and Adam started chatting about kind of partnering together, what I wrote down in terms of what I really wanted on a really tactical level, it was to never do another WordPress site in my life. It just, I find it very stressful for some reason.
Yes.
But the projects that I loved were always working with retailers and online e-commerce companies. And there's just like a beautiful complexity in those projects, because you're considering design and brand and aesthetic 100%. But you're also thinking through just really like strategic, how do I increase average order value? How do I get them through this checkout process as seamlessly as possible? And then how do I make something that's really easy for the team behind the scenes to fulfill orders and get things shipped and make amazing reports so that they can grow their business? And I just found that like so intriguing.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to do more of it. And then on like a sort of different level, something that I wrote down that I really wanted to do was just not be so obsessed with work. It's something that my work has always been my identity. And as I get older and I have small kids, I don't want that anymore. I think when I was like 25 and a creative director, I just thought I was like the shit and getting so far ahead in life. And I just am so tired of that hustle. And so what I wrote down that I wanted was to do good work for about 6 hours a day. And then I wanted to come home and I wanted to hang out with my kids and I wanted to go outside and I want to read a book and I want to go to school board meetings and fight for Jacksonville Public Schools and be more out in the community and serving others. And I don't want to be in front of my computer all day.
Yeah.
And so whatever I could do to facilitate the rest of my life or create a rest of my life really is what I wanted to do and what's really important for me to do going forward.
I love that so much. I also think there's so much that this year has opened up in everyone's lives, I'm sure, but I can just speak for myself and obviously what I know about you. But at the beginning of the summer after George Floyd's murder, I was like, okay, if I don't actually carve out time to work on things that I want to do, I'm always going to fill as much as I can with work because that's just a lot of who I am. I think that's a lot of who you are. And so I told our team after everything with COVID hit, which was only 4 of us, and then like you were working on projects, was I'm going to work from 11 to 6 every day. So 7 hours. 7 hours. I'm going to spend my mornings either spending time reading and writing, volunteering, doing pro bono work, and just filling in that time with a way to get into anti-racism work or into how can I help my community get connected with art, especially the young and the elderly. And so I think what you talk about is like, it has to be intentional, and scaling these things aren't necessarily like, we're not trying to just like exit a business, or we're not trying to just scale to $5 million overnight. And I think that that's a huge part of it.
Well, and I think for me, it's also coming to this realization that I can't change my personality. My personality will always love work. It's just, I'm like achiever through and through. And every personality test I ever take is like, you are an extreme achiever and you need to be like going all the time.
Yep.
And I feel like instead of fighting that, I just want to figure out how my business can support other things that I care about.
Yeah.
At the same time, like I care a lot about the public school system, and I care a lot about racial inequality, and I care a lot about supporting other women business owners, especially in technology, and other areas where they're really underrepresented. And I can do one of 2 things, and I want to do both. One is carving out time to donate my own time and resources to supporting those projects that I care about. But the other is really working with my personality to turn my work into also doing the work. And being a lot more picky about the types of clients that I work with, and making sure that we're aligned on values and that the work we're creating is really amplifying the efforts that I already care about.
Yeah, I love that so much. So if I think about, and I just lost my train of thought, we can always cut this part out. Cool. Okay. So when we were doing that exercise and just like thinking about the things that we want to do, the coolest thing about it was as I was reading through your list, I really felt as if a lot of the things that you mentioned, it's not that I didn't want to do them, but I think I can even like track with what you said and kind of like point out how I think we complement each other and that we both want to do different things, but there's still a lot of alignment. And a lot of the things that I wanted to do or the things that I want to do in the future are really help with design and branding. I still want to do that for e-commerce retail brands, but a lot of the focus that I want to take on is helping small business owners who offer like really exceedingly special services. And so you think about people like coaches, consultants, authors, activists, you know, even real estate agents or artists, and just a lot of different people who don't need to necessarily have some of those back-end processes that a retail or e-commerce brand needs, but they really need to like own it and feel like they live the brand that they're putting out there. And so I didn't really have a desire to work on, you know, designing out e-commerce sites, but I want to help impact and influence and art direct a lot of those projects as needed and just have that collaborative feel and continue designing sites for WordPress for service-based businesses was something that I love to do. I love, you know, creating an online space that feels like it can support people's voices and share their thoughts and just empower them to use their website to launch something that they came up with yesterday. And so in my collaboration with our WordPress developer, Matt, we've really just like, I would say zeroed in on how we can create a website that is a tool for them that lets them evolve and change as they want to and doesn't feel constrained. And so I really want to impact like all of another thing that I wrote was like just impacting all of our own brands under the Wonder Jam family of businesses, but also our clients and just like impacting their vision and voice and, you know, challenging them in inclusivity and their impact. And really the same thing goes as far as just like boundaries and not working excessive amounts. I don't have children. And I think in the balance of wanting my own balance, I think wanting to move forward and saying to a client who has kids, like, you can just text me anytime today and we'll just hop on a call whenever you can, is something that I love being able to do. I love being able to accommodate, and I can over accommodate for people. And I think I've done that a lot over the past few years where I'm trying to make everyone else's dreams come true. But I truly love that, you know, where my life is different, it can really balance out someone else's life. And so, yeah, I think that all of those things, you know, thinking through what it is that we wrote down and how that impacts our plans moving forward, that was really impactful for me.
Yeah, I think something that I've seen come out of what is now Wonderly, especially post-COVID, is it feels like you've taken a whole different approach to how you do work, and it feels a lot more organic and collaborative, which I think is very different than probably working with a traditional design agency.
Yeah.
And especially like the way that you've been doing branding and just presenting really early concepts. And I don't know if you want to share more about that. But I think it's something that's really special to Wonderly.
Yeah, I would love to. I'll kind of talk about Wonderly now, and then I'll ask a couple questions about Basis, and we can kind of go back and forth. And this is the part of the conversation that I was really excited about, because we both like know where we've come from as far as skills and talent and experience. But I think it's awesome that we can appreciate our different kind of like paths that we've chosen, and that we can still collaborate on them. So the business that I will be managing is called Wonderly, which is awesome. Our lawyers messaged us the other day that the EIN numbers are on their way. So by the time this is up, don't worry everyone, it's official, which is awesome. And like I said, it's a family name, which I think is really special. It seems really trendy because it's like everything adds like an LY to the end of it. But I love that so much of my whole adulthood has been talking about being timeless and not trendy. And I love that I can actually back up the name of my business with, it might be trendy, but it's pretty timeless. And so, like I said, we will be helping small business owners who offer exceedingly special services through, design, brand collaboration, expanding the brand, working one-on-one with them in person, which really now means via screen share. I love sketching with the clients. I love showing them my sketches before moving on to refining. And I started to write down some like guiding principles for Wonderly. And a lot of it was like, show your work, show it quickly. Like, don't hold on to anything for too long. Ask for feedback. Perfect is the enemy of done is the thing that Matt and I talk about often with websites. Like, just this idea that nothing will ever be perfect and finished completely. If you've ever owned a business, you know that checking a box just means you're going to check it again later, most likely. And so, I touched a little bit on that earlier, but just working with people like coaches and activists, people who write books, people who offer, healers, people who offer acupuncture, just like all these people that really, I would say, pour so much of their energy and open up really vulnerably to make money is such a weird thing. Like, the more and more I'm in this, I realize that the work that I do every day is vulnerable, and to share the work that you do or to share your inspiration it's probably why meetings exhaust me more than just if I was just talking about something else. And so, yeah, I really want to focus on empowering our clients to like use the branding assets that we make, whether it's their logo, their website. I have gotten really into designing in Canva for clients and leaving my ego at the door and saying like, this is a really easy tool and I don't need to work in Adobe Illustrator for it to be good, and letting them then make edits themselves. And so my vision really is working with people who want to actively kind of go against societal norms when it comes to even the effects of capitalism. So it's like, we live in capitalism, we're all making money. We aren't really opting out of it, but I want people who intend to, promote healing with their own clients, or promote healing with the land or the city that they live in, or the desire to really just, like you talked about, not necessarily compartmentalize their life, but just live a life that doesn't have to feel so separated all the time. Yeah. And so sometimes I just get a lot of joy out of working with working parent that works in their own business that just seeks to be more present with their family. And I think that can be just as motivating for me at Wonderly than someone who wants to, increase their revenue by $200,000 next year. So yeah, like really, like I said, service-based businesses seems like such a generic phrase, but it's those people that are, I think, offering really special and magical, elements of themselves for their customers. And I'm excited to help them through Wonderly.
I love it. I love it. How do you think this will change the way that you and Adam work together?
That's a good question. Since starting the planning for this, we've actually collaborated more than we ever did last year. Last year, we had a team made up of contractors, full-time, part-time people, reached 13 people at one point, and we never talked during the day. We were never really in the same room. If we were just like checking off a box because we both said we would be there. And I found it really hard to be transparent with a team that size, because not everyone was as present as the next person. And I just didn't feel the collaboration goals that I had for when I first started a business with my husband. And so we'll still maintain ownership in the Wonder Jam together, but I'm like so excited for him to come in and work his magic on projects under Wonderly when needed. And I'm so excited to see him really thrive in his strategic and futuristic plans with the Wonder Jam. For those that are curious, the Wonder Jam is going to stay still pretty complex and I would say like murky, in that Adam spends a lot of time thinking of how we can better partner with clients in creating the opportunity for someone who owns a small business to work with someone on their own processes, or their own, making sure that there's like an equitable foundation for their teammates, or just a lot of those complex things that Adam has worked with you and I to streamline when planning on launching these sister brands. And so many clients out there, you know, they want to understand, like, how can my business stand uniquely among all of these corporations, or like even chaotic small businesses that I'm surrounded by. And so he'll continue to do a lot. I mean, it'll almost be a part like media group, like where he's interviewing people, he's doing a lot of writing, and honestly allowing me and you, Ashley, to just do the work, which is really awesome. Helping us handle all financial, legal, you know, process oriented tasks that you and I don't necessarily want to do. The Wonder Jam will be that for us, or the Wonder Jam will generate content, whether it's like through blogging or social media, to, like I said, allow us to be present in the work or present not at work, which is definitely the goal. So the collaboration
Adam is definitely our soil.
Yeah.
In all of the best ways. Like Allie and I can't grow and be corn and beans and pumpkins and squash without like really nutritious, enriching soil underneath us. And even in the like past year that I've been working with you guys, Adam has been that for me, just providing that really solid foundation for me to do my thing on. It's like, it's a gift. It takes a special person to be able to be that person for others. And what Adam does for us personally in that way, he will be that reflection within the Wonder Jam, for the Wonder Jam to be that for other business owners too.
Yeah, like Adam kind of teased this concept to me a few years ago, where he's like, you can be less present in maybe the Wonder Jam. You can kind of do the things you want to do. We can spin off some other stuff. And I think his futuristic strategic strengths are like his top 5. Mine are like the bottom. And so I journaled this summer, like, Allie, you need to listen to Adam more closely when he talks about these things. It's not that I'm going to just quickly, like Ashley, you had talked about, like understanding who you are, and you're not going to necessarily change that much from like a personality strength standpoint. It's just, I need to understand that he brings so much futurism and like vision into a scenario. And the fact that I finally caught up, I'm like so thankful. And I think that that's such a huge asset for us.
Oh, love that so much.
So tell us about your sister brand.
Yes, I love it. So I will be launching Basis, which is a different style of digital studio that helps retail brands build amazing online experiences. So while Wonderly will be focusing on those service-based businesses that offer really special services, Basis is going to be all about those e-commerce and retail clients and helping them build something really awesome as well. So the name for Basis is kind of funny. I sort of said it on a whim one day. This maybe can be like a podcast insiders, because I definitely don't want to promote it, but it is pretty funny.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, it can be a funny acronym for building awesome shit in Shopify. And I was like, Basis, it's perfect. But it sort of fit, because I do think that for retailers, your e-commerce experience, especially post-COVID, is your e-commerce presence. It really is your basis and your foundation for being successful and for launching something that is special to you. And then Allie was reading a book at the time, and literally as I was typing, hey, what do you think about the name Basis? She was like, I just read something this morning and I had highlighted this phrase, basis for collective action, which I think really aligns to what we're hoping to build, which is a business that's equitable and provides opportunities to build careers and opportunities for others, that's really rooted in helping others grow and bringing others up with us as we go. And so I think that was really when the name Basis just kind of clicked for us. But I love that it's like a mix of seriousness and silliness.
Me too.
But so the services that we'll be offering are web design and development. So this could be really anything from helping a tiny business tweak a Shopify theme as they sort of get going on their own for the first time. It could also be a custom design experience and development experience for Shopify Plus customers doing millions in sales annually. I really think that our clients could span the gamut in terms of size. And it's more about working with people who are, I think it'll still be mostly small businesses, but who can be looking to scale. We really want to serve mostly women-owned businesses. And I think that I foresee a lot of the people that we have worked with and will be working with have gotten started before with their first ever online store, whether that was in Shopify or Squarespace or WooCommerce. And they did something a little bit DIY and they saw some early success. They learned some lessons along the way. And now they're ready for some help really optimizing for conversion or speed or something that just feels a little bit more polished and customized for their brand, or they have some unique kind of business needs and they need help integrating apps or systems to hit those complex requirements.
Yeah.
I think that's really going to be the niche that we serve, which I'm super excited about.
Yeah.
And then also, so Allie is going to be art director of Basis. And I think something that is very different about Basis is that outside of just the design and development, we'll still be offering branding, photography, and packaging. And that's really your magic. And I think when you think of a small business owner launching an online store, it's challenging enough to like figure out what it is that you're going to sell. And do I need a real retail space? And what is my price structure going to be?
Oh my gosh.
There are tons of moving parts. And so I think for Basis to be that one-stop shop where you can get an amazing brand and get help with your product photography and packaging design and get your website launched for the first time, I think that will just take so much burden off of getting those businesses started.
Yeah.
And you and I are really great at helping create beautiful things that will resonate with those customers.
Yeah. Yeah. Our work like complements each other so much. One of our, I think, biggest collaborations has been with Primally Pure, and me being able to work on their rebranding of their whole packaging line back 5 years ago, 5 or 6 years ago, doing the photography. Like that's been so amazing to see the web design portion complement all of that. And it's just amazing. It's amazing that we can work with awesome clients like that and handle a lot of the different visual elements that all play a role in that conversion. And so many of the things that you do for Primally Pure, I would never want to do, and probably vice versa.
And I would not know how to design a package to save my life. Like, how do I print this exactly?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
But I think that like that is very special and different, because I do think you'll meet a lot of e-commerce studios who think that they can do all of that maybe, or I feel like I wouldn't have been able to do that on my own. If I wanted to launch my own e-commerce studio, I would have been spread way too thin and just not equally talented in all areas. So I think that better together approach is going to be amazing for our clients.
Yeah.
I think Basis, I keep calling it refreshingly different.
I love that.
And I think that that's because I've worked a lot in the e-commerce agency space, and something that's really important to both of us is just doing everything with a lot of intention. And so as I thought about aligning my whole career essentially on helping other people sell things, I had to get really clear on how that made me feel about capitalism and how we're contributing to that. And so for me, I want to work with people who really know that how you sell is just as important as what you sell, and how can we do that in a way that feels very aligned with how we want to elevate social issues or demand equality using our voice. I want to do that, and I want to help our clients do that. And I think that is markedly different than working with most agencies who are going to emphasize your profits and scalability and growth first and foremost. And while I want that for you too as a client, and have lots of great tactics and strategies along the way to help you do that, I want to do it in a way that feels really aligned with your values and is something that your clients and customers will resonate with, and that your communities will benefit from, and the planet that we all walk on will benefit from, and our babies will benefit from. And really, above all else, I just want Basis to exist to lift up others and to do the work and make the change and just be better for the world.
I love it. Yeah, I resonated with what you said in that visioning was always weird because you just knew it. And I think so much of what I wrote down about Wonderly, or even like a lot of the values that you wrote down for Basis, have been lived out by us for so long, or have been maybe like deep within us, but no opportunity to enact it. And one of the things that I know is unique in sort of our vision is I don't really have a desire to grow Wonderly beyond myself for a while. Matt is an integral part of it and is a WordPress developer, but I don't see myself bringing on another designer for a while. I feel like I'm really excited to have partners. I'm excited to have people who treat the business like they own it, because a lot of us will own it, and creating like employee stock options in the future, or, you know, making sure that, yeah, just that people are compensated fairly. When there's a huge win, everyone wins, and we're all going to be sharing actual money profit, which, you know, wasn't the, no pun intended, basis for creating this family of businesses, but it was a huge part of that. It was me saying, I think we can all make more money together. And, you know, when you're not 21 anymore, you start to think about like, what will my career look like? Like, will I be designing logos when I'm 52? Maybe, maybe not. And I think looking into that future has been like such an awesome exercise for us. I would love to hear what your vision is for growth with Basis.
I think that Basis will probably grow and scale a little bit quicker than Wonderly might. And part of it is a lot of my career was spent managing teams and managing others. And it's something that I weirdly miss. I really like helping others grow and learn new things, and just like nurturing that raw talent is something that I enjoy doing and think I'm pretty good at doing. So I would love to scale Basis to a size where it's robust enough to support our livelihoods, obviously, and our clients, but really grow it into careers and opportunities for others, especially Black, Indigenous, and people of color. I want to build something that when you look at it, when you look at this company, you know that it's diverse in thought and background and perspective. And I think when you and I started chatting really seriously, it was right after George Floyd's murder and in June, with all of the sort of unrest. And we were both really angry. And I think for me, it was like the first time where I was angry plus action, and not just angry and like post a meme and get over it. And I think a lot of, honestly, white people felt that way for the first time in their lives. But for me, the action would be, I want to grow something big enough to provide opportunities that maybe wouldn't have been there before for others, or just being really intentional when we create opportunities in the way that we hire and who we partner with.
I've even this summer, we've been talking to The Darkest Horse, which offers some of those inclusivity trainings, or just forums, facilitating forums for those different businesses, a lot bigger than usually ours. And so in talking to them about creating a website, we've been talking about participating in one of their trainings in late September. And, you know, a huge part of it, I love the diversity of thought, background, and perspective that you talked about, because at the end of the day, if you're creating things, it's out of your perspective, and there are really small nuances that communicate to someone else, this is for you or this is not for you. And we can all be really blind to our own perspective and how that comes out. And so a huge part of my discussion with The Darkest Horse was like, basically, I would love to hear from them on how our different brands' messaging feels exclusive or inclusive. And I think that that's something that I am much more vocal about now with our own clients, and bringing things up. It's like, if I spent all these years not crafting, that sounds sort of weird, but like working towards a, you know, transparent or open-minded relationship with clients, then I should be able to say, hey, this thing that you're putting out, it sounds a little off. Or, you know, I would really challenge you to, you know, think outside of the small bubble that you exist in, and saying it with importance, you know, and being okay with that. So I think there's a lot of confidence that comes with the businesses and the sister brands that we're building, because I think have a lot more control over the decisions that we're making day to day. And the desire to scale to whatever size, but slowly, it gives us a lot of opportunities to make decisions slower. Or you and I have been a lot more thoughtful about, is this client the right fit, you know, and just taking things a little bit slowly, where we've probably been going at 100 miles an hour for the last few years.
Yeah. I think that's probably the biggest blessing of COVID, is just space to be really intentional. And how do we keep that going when that worldwide pause is over?
Yeah. I completely agree.
Which that pause feels very over to me, by the way. And so
Me too. Yeah.
that we're still creating it and nurturing it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's important to remember that the last few years, and for you, the last year of owning a business and just saying yes to things we can always be grateful for the lessons that we've learned, and the ability to move forward in a much more focused sense is so awesome. And I was just saying to Adam this morning, I feel like I'm taking on new client calls with like such a new zest for life. And I feel so much more focused on when things are a fit. And I'm sure you feel the same. It's like, it's just really awesome to feel like it's like a concentrated amount. Like I feel concentrated in the things that I'm doing. It doesn't feel diluted. And I love that.
Yeah. And I'm just like so thankful for you for being that first one to sort of speak up and say, this is the world that I want to create. And sort of going back to the braiding sweetgrass metaphor of the corns and the beans and the squash, the corn. So not to like go way into plant stuff here, but the corn grows first. So it comes out in like May, and it has to be this tall corn stalk that grows up and out of the soil. And so I feel like, Allie, you're the corn. Like you had to do this first on your own, and you had to be the first to speak up and figure out the world that you wanted to make. And that's allowing, I'll be the bean, the bean to grow next, who can take its time and like grow the secure root foundation before growing up into the corn stalk. And so the bean like wraps itself around the corn, and the corn helps the bean's leaves get up to the light, which I think is just
so cool.
Like how I feel about you. You're the corn to my bean.
I love it. It's so great.
And then to finish the analogy is like, I'm so excited to see the rest of the sister brands, because the third sister is the idea of squash. And so squash spreads around the feet of the corn and the beans, and it's more of like a carpet plant, I guess. And so it stays low to the ground, and it kind of intercepts the light that the corn and the bean give it. And then it's all about, there's just this interesting concept of reciprocity. Like there's always enough for all. The way that the spacing of the plants helps everyone get enough, and the way that the chemicals break down make sure that there's efficiency within the soil. And I think really that like organic harmony is so much of what we want to create, and just this idea of like respecting one another, supporting each other,
and not separate. Like we don't talk about those three plants as like, and then 3 feet away is this, here's the beans, and then 3 feet away is the squash. I think I'm so excited. It would be rude if I didn't talk about Zingerman's being a huge influence over me and creating this sort of structure that really resonated. Zingerman's, which is up in Ann Arbor, serves and creates and sells really high quality food. And I learned about them a few years ago reading Small Giants. And so Small Giants is a book and a community that focuses on businesses that choose to be great instead of big. And you can still be a really big small business. Zingerman's has like, I think 9 to 14, I forget how many, basically sister brands, and they have a community of businesses. And it's been really awesome reading about co-founder. One of the co-founders' name is Ari, and just his writing style resonates so much with me. It feels like I was explaining to someone, my friend Simi, when I was sharing her about like our plans, I'm like, it sounds weird, but it's like, I feel like I'm reading my like soul sister writer. Like I feel like the way that he writes is the way that I think and write myself. And so I've been learning all about that, and just, I'm so excited for the future where other sister brands pop up, because one, it allows us to bring in someone who thinks the way that we do and has similar values and, sees the world the way that we see it. And there's a story where Ari says when they first started, they would drive to Detroit every morning really early to pick up the bread that kind of met their standards to sell with their sandwiches, the bread of their sandwiches. And so at some point they decided, we're just going to make our own bakery. And it wasn't like, I don't want to support this other business anymore, but it was very much realizing that you can create and grow and kind of expand this mission and start offering things that maybe weren't necessarily like the first. It wasn't the corn, but it was that sort of carpet it was that squash. And so I'm just excited. I think we see a lot of holes in the market that serves small businesses. And I think that when we find the right collaborator, it's going to be really fun. The third sister that will launch later this fall is called Studio J, and it will be really focused on creating autonomy when it comes to photographers and videographers renting out space to shoot. And a huge part of it is just training and not being so secretive within the industry, and like showing, we've been test piloting the business with a photographer where, you know, she'll say, this is sort of the look that I'm going for, and I can quickly show her how to light that. And so I might not be managing a team all the time, but I'm so excited to build up this talented, diverse network where we can, you know, either bring them into projects or refer work out to them.
And I love that. I feel like that's just so important for like the place that you are in your career, and the place that I am is like, the point now is to help others be able to do this too. And it is weird how secretive everyone is with their own success, and the pieces that they do tell you aren't the pieces that are helpful. And I feel like it's just a huge call is to just be like radically helpful and radically transparent with others who are trying to do the same thing, and know that there will always be enough for us all.
I completely agree. I think, you know, if anyone out there is listening and this seems interesting, it's like, we want to share the way that we think when we finally have time to email people back. Like, I think that you and I are very like open book. Adam is like the most open. And, you know, it was interesting this morning. I was trying to write down guiding principles for Wonderly, and one of them was like, treat people's budgets like we would our own. And I think so much of what goes unsaid in the world of tech or e-commerce or, you know, life coaches is like, not that there's anything wrong with this, but like, we don't have family money that we've funded things with, or, you know, we're not trying to like rent out the coolest physical space and pretend to be something that we're not. I think when a client comes to me and says, I have $1,500, I don't laugh that off. I think I know what it's like to have $1,500 and say like, I really don't want to waste this money. And e-commerce it definitely comes with bigger budgets sometimes, but sometimes not. Sometimes we can be really helpful. And so I'm just excited for us to get creative in that way. And I think a lot of that empathy is a huge differentiator.
Agree. Oh, I'm just so excited. Let's just do it.
I know, we're doing it. So thank you everyone for listening to our plans and our thoughts and how we think about it. I know Ashli and I will be on the podcast a lot in the future. Adam will be taking back over the space, and I was really thankful that he let us just talk to each other and ask each other questions. And I never have a really cool sign off, but I would say
I have a really great sign off.
Okay, go ahead.
Are you ready? In the spirit of both of our favorite podcasts of all time, Call Your Girlfriend.
Yep.
See you on the internet.
Yep. See you on the internet. I was just so excited to have that conversation with Ashli. As we pointed out, we both kind of put our heads down and we can work a lot and we talk throughout the day, but it was just refreshing to have over an hour long conversation with her about, you know, what we envision with all of these changes and focused and intentionality. And so I'm really excited that everyone got to listen to that. But as we transition out of that conversation, Adam, I'd love to hear what you see happening here at the Wonder Jam cast and the Wonder Jam in general. I mean, I alluded to it in the conversation with Ashli, but the Wonder Jam may still feel a little messier and complex, but in a good way, and actually not quite as complex as it had been in the past.
Yeah, I think at the beginning of COVID, we didn't know what to do, so we just started inviting people on to our social channels when we started doing live streams, and the response to that and the way in which, and it wasn't like planned lectures, it was just asking people how they were changing and evolving, and the response to that was incredible. And the response from people being on and sharing, and then also the response from people paying attention and listening. And I was like, I want to just do a lot more of this. But then this thing happened where we started cooking these ideas about launching these sisters, and we figured out that we wanted to be quiet for a bit, and different social causes really came to the forefront on social media. Specifically the stuff around the murder of George Floyd and Black Lives Matter and all of that sort of anti-racism that just sort of bubbled to the surface. And we just wanted to be quiet for a little bit and let some of these changes happen and think about them and just be really intentional. And so we've kind of been holding back as far as, we've got a couple of podcast episodes recorded that aren't launched. Then those may come out someday. We have a couple of, we had some live streams that we just like held off on. And so we've been eager to get back to sort of highlighting some of the incredible people we get to talk to often through our podcasts and having guests on, and letting some of the rest of the world get to meet some of the hidden heroes that we get to watch operate every day. And they're doing the same thing on our social channels through live streams. And so the Wonder Jam is going to kick back off and do those going forward. We'll have Ashli and Allie as guests, or they may even run episodes, or we'll have different team members on from time to time. But my responsibility will be I'll be in charge of sort of keeping that rolling, and we'll have all sorts of, I think the coolest thing about the Wonder Jam, one of the reasons why Ashli and other people like working here, is we have some of the best clients, like just incredible people. And they're not the type of people who are just famous on the internet all the time. So there's not like, it's not like they've all written a book and they've all been on 85 podcasts to give the same talking points. It's very inspiring and normal people. And I love to kind of bring them out into the world so we can learn from them, and so that more people get to know them. So we'll do a lot more of that. Studio J will probably, spin up around November is kind of like my thought, but more will come from that there. Coaching is still doing that. That's like an ongoing thing. For people who want to jump into that, I do that with folks. And, we'll just continue on developing our team, but really we're focusing in on, as far as publicly, the Wonder Jam will be really working on the podcast, live streams on our social channels, and, sort of putting helpful information into our blog, and really focusing on the Gem Club as far as what we're offering to people sort of behind the scenes. So
it's really like the Wonder Jam is that foundation, and, helping propel brands, whether they're our own or clients or other businesses out there. And that's what I'm really excited about, is so much of the Wonder Jam in the past has been a lot of me in a production role, which I love, and you having such an amazing, I would say, like, place in your heart and mind for education and empowerment. And it's not that you and I didn't do the other thing. It's just, I was, earlier in this conversation explaining, like, it's great to be a little bit more focused.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. One of the hardest parts about doing a podcast with you, like, honestly, or together, I shouldn't say with you, like, it's, people wouldn't understand how hard it is to do a podcast with you.
So difficult.
No, but is that you and I would have something scheduled. Like, we'd have a really consistent, we'd have everything on the calendar, everything scheduled, all these things. And then we'd pop into a Thursday at 4:30 p.m.
Yep.
And we would have to make a decision on, should we record this podcast, or should you finish editing those photos so that you can send them over by 5?
Right.
Or should you spend an extra half hour on the design that you've like gotten into a zone with? Totally. And it was always the correct choice in the moment to invest in those projects. Like, from a financial standpoint, which of those things would you prefer to be obligated to be doing?
Yeah.
And I didn't always, we differ in that, where this stuff is like one of the first things that I think of sometimes, is I get excited. I'm like, find an interesting person, or we sit and have a conversation with a client, and you learn there's this business that they're running so well without a lot of fanfare and no press, and they're crushing, and I was like, oh my gosh, people deserve to hear these people's stories, because we, the number one thing our clients suffer with, and we know this through listening to them, but also we do interviews and we survey people, is the comparison game.
Yeah.
Comparison and connection are the two things that I always think of just sort of in life that we hear universally, is everyone compares himself to what they read about some other company with a good PR firm behind them in the news or on social media. And then connection is that you can have a lot of followers, you can have a big team, you can have a bunch of customers who love you, but you might not feel an actual strong, clear, and deep connection. And so I've gotten really excited about sort of creating a space that can facilitate for those two things. I know that really doesn't do much to help everyone's business grow or, but I think that's a thing that I'm excited about the Wonder Gym providing some help with. But it's very different than helping somebody with their paid advertising or their marketing or their website or any of those other things. And so I think there's a big opportunity for us, and I'm excited to kind of chase after it.
Me too.
So so if you have questions, or if you can subscribe to the podcast. We're going to have more information coming out. We'll have different teammates, clients, and ourselves explaining, going on further about some of the changes that are happening here and elaborating. And we'll also, we'll do these across our social network. So each of the sister brands has their own Instagram account. They'll have their own. It seems like nobody was really excited about having Facebook accounts, but they'll probably have their own Facebook accounts.
That's what our soil can set that up.
You can just know that no one is enthusiastically sharing things on Facebook, but you might see them if you are there. Maybe we can put some goodness into the world on Facebook, because it seems like Facebook is really in need of some goodness.
Yeah, maybe
in someone's feeds there. Or you can just, message us, ask questions, any of those things, anything that you're curious about, interested in, or have further questions about. I'm happy to talk through any of those things. So thanks for listening. Appreciate you. Appreciate
Always.
Your time. Thanks for putting up with our gaps in between seasons. I know podcasting 101 teaches you to be consistent, but I don't know. I just don't feel like it's not in our DNA to just, we're not machines, right?
True. That's
Gotta take some breaks. Gotta evolve a little bit. So is that it? Is that all you got? You got anything else?
That's all I got. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.